the whole taxation is kind of theft, in my opinion. You want to keep capital with good capital allocators, and there will be more capital created. When you take capital away from terrible capital allocators, by their deeds you shall know them, or governments, you have the results that you see right now.
Check out the website simplepassivecashflow.com for podcasts, videos, articles, and free e-courses. If you guys have any specific questions, feel free to reach out to the team via email, and we'll get you pointed in the right direction, whether it be an educational course or information about syndication deals. If you haven't read my book, The Journey to Simple Passive Cashflow, click the link below to get a free copy. Thanks to John and the Wealth and Freedom Nexus podcast. Our team is here to help you take the first step, or if you're a seasoned investor, then we're here to expand your reach into alternative investing.
You know, for the most passive returns in real estate investing, I like to put my money with Freedom Family Investments, a team I personally trust because they pay me steady streams of cash flow, hassle-free, all while doing the things I love. Returns are better and more reliable than the stock market, up to 12%. I love that tax benefits offset capital gains or your W-2 income. For a little insider pro tip, knowing who to trust is key to success in investing. Freedom Family Investments has a perfect track record of paying their investors right on time. To learn more, text family to 66866. If you want to invest on autopilot with people I personally trust and with a team who cares about you reaching your financial goals, go ahead and text family to 66866.
Are you tired of trying to keep ahead in the rat race, only to have so much of your hard-earned money going to the tax collector? Equity doesn't pay the bills. Retirement savings don't pay you now, and there are only 24 hours in a day to work. The only solution is passive income that pays you 24/7 now, not 40 years from now. From vetted investment opportunities to tax saving strategies, let John guide you through all the confusion and take control of your financial life in pursuit of financial freedom. So sit back, relax, and welcome to the Wealth and Freedom Nexus.
Hello, and welcome back to the WFN podcast. As always, I'm your host, investor, educator, and realtor, John Rickgarden. Hard to believe this journey that I've been on. This is, hard to believe, episode 100 of the WFN podcast. It's been quite the ride. Downloaded over 200,000 times. I don't know exactly off the top of my head. Over 150 countries, over 800 cities worldwide. So for all the listeners out there, thank you for the support. And if this is the first time joining us, be sure to hit that subscribe button or hit the bell on YouTube or whatever your medium of choice is. Also, be sure to check out W Freedom Nexus on YouTube, Instagram, and Twitter, and also WFreedomNexus.com, where you can get tons of free resources from turnkey real estate investing to infinite banking to international investing. There's been a lot of updates coming in 2023 or have been out in 2023 and got a runway of updates that'll be coming in 2024. So as I've been on this journey doing this podcast, there's this big thing of pod fade where last I checked, on average, I think it was like 40% of all podcasts fade out after episode number 7. People, I think they just say, oh, everyone's got a podcast, I'll start a podcast. And I don't think they really have an idea of just how much work there is from the recording, the editing, the finding guests, the scheduling, getting everything just synced in, and then also the marketing and promotion piece. I mean, there's the old adage of you build it, then they will come. Well, it doesn't quite work that way. You got to do a lot of marketing, pod swaps, advertising, Facebook groups. There's just a lot of avenues to get the name out there, get the word out so that more and more people are exposed to that. And with that, as far as marketing goes, again, for anyone out there listening, be sure to just take a moment to, especially if you're listening this on Apple Podcasts, to leave a rating and review. That really helps the algorithms to bump this up higher in the podcast rating charts. And if you ever have a, friend or family member, you think that, gosh, I think they'd get a lot of value out of this, or a certain episode that you really enjoyed. Just talked to a friend the other day that her and her husband, I think she said they both listened to episode number 31 about 3 or 4 times. That was my interview with Spike Cohen, who is the Libertarian vice presidential candidate back in 2020. I just got a lot of nuances, and they even said, the second time we listened to it, we picked up on a couple things, and third time. So, I'm a big believer of sharing the knowledge, sharing the wealth for anyone out there. Hey, I think so-and-so would benefit greatly from trust deed investing, like we had in episode 57, or turnkey investing in markets that aren't exactly, on front and center on a lot of radars, like back on episode 59. And, I could go down the laundry list of all the episodes. Like I said, this is episode 100. So, I was thinking about this for several months okay, what should I do for the 100th episode? Should I try to bring on a really famous guest, maybe Robert Kiyosaki or Keith Weinhold, or, there's a lot of names on the space out there. Heck, maybe Dave Ramsey. I'm not sure we would have quite the entertaining, back and forth, the jabs against whole life insurance and debt, but well, since he's blocked me on Twitter, I wasn't, holding my breath for that one. So after much thinking, I decided to kind of kill 2 birds with 1 stone. One, I wanted to bring on a guest, a good friend of mine. We met back up in person in 2019, and I followed his podcast, Cash Flow Ninja, since 2016 when he first launched that. And he actually has 3 podcasts out now. MC Laubscher, I wanted to get him back on, kind of share some thoughts on a number of different topics. We really didn't have much of a, talk track or, question list. We really just kind of wanted to keep it conversational. It's like, heck, it's been over a year since we connected anyways. Let's keep this conversational, see where the conversation goes. But really did kind of want to highlight, or at least put some thought into Social Security. I was trying to think of a topic that I haven't really touched base on this podcast, and I do want to have some other guests, with this topic as far as, retirement accounts, Social Security, social contracts, etc. And it just kind of dawned on me, because it was August of 1935 that Franklin Delano Roosevelt signed in the Social Security Act. This was basically just a program, very high level, to provide income security for people that had reached retirement age. And at the time, thought this would just be a great program. Even back then, it was pretty controversial, but regardless, it got passed. And now fast forward, sitting at about 90 years since that passage, and even the trustees are saying, this program's starting to go insolvent. We're going to have to, restructure this. We can't guarantee the payments we made on this. And the goal line seems to be adjusted, but somewhere between 2028 and 2032, Social Security is predicted to either go insolvent, or they're only going to be able to pay 70-80% of promised benefits to those in the program. It's just kind of interesting where, I've kind of gone down the rabbit hole. Little spoiler alert, this will not be out by the time this gets released, but I have been working on a pretty in-depth book on Social Security, as I've really kind of did a deep dive into the program, how it first started, how it's evolved over the years, and kind of go past the political talking points where, a lot of progressives, the AOCs, the Bernies of, if the rich would just pay their fair share, and if we could just get more money in the program, then it would be solvent, everything would be hunky-dory, and we'd be living in utopia. And the fact of the matter is, it's just not all that simple. Now, I'm sure for anyone listening to this, and a simple Google search will tell you this, and MC and I even talk about this a little bit, where when Social Security first came out, not a lot of people lived past age 62. And in fact, 1900s even, and, just different time, different environment, the average life expectancy in the United States was about 48. So, we're not even talking getting into your 50s, getting over the hill. They didn't get to the hill. That's the life expectancy. And, even into the 30s when Social Security started, the concept of Social Security started to gain more traction and get more popular. And then obviously, like I said, 1935 got passed into law, that a lot of people didn't even make it into the mid or late 60s. So it was almost like, I would say, a true insurance program where not everyone that puts money in is going to get something out of it. Just think of your car insurance, for instance. It's one of those things you hope you don't need it. And, I myself have paid into car insurance for years, and I honestly can't remember the last time I put a claim in, but if something catastrophic happened, my car was completely totaled, it's one of those things that, gosh, I'm glad I got this. But at the same token, I don't look at it where, well, gee, Paul, gosh, I paid you, I don't know what the number is, $10,000 ever since I became driving age. I haven't got near that amount back. I want you to send me a check for $10,000. I need to get that money back. Or maybe I should get $15,000, $20,000. I should be able to get a nice return on that. And I say that kind of, I don't know, tongue in cheek, if you will, because a true insurance program, not everyone is going to get out what they put in. That's just how it's designed. You pool a lot of money together. You basically share the risk, spread the risk around, where, yes, if an event happens that, pick a number, has a 5% chance of occurring, that 5% chance of occurring isn't a lot. But if it happens to you or the average person, it could be a financial devastation. But hence, with an insurance program, people pool their money together. That, yes, I understand I'm paying this premium every single month. I understand statistically I'm not going to get anything out of it. But if something were to happen catastrophic, I would be covered. That's pretty much the whole concept of insurance. And I bring that up because when you look up Social Security, it really is, or it really started as a Social Security insurance program where if you got to age 65, and keep in mind, this is back in 1935. Yeah, there was pensions, but there weren't IRAs, there weren't 401ks, a lot of mainstream things. And, right, wrong, or indifferent, just the philosophy was you pretty much work till you die. And then obviously things have changed, but it was an insurance program. If you lived to age 65, then you would be a recipient of these funds and you would, get a, guaranteed paycheck for the rest of your life. And I say guaranteed because, essentially that's how Social Security is designed. And ironically, especially if you hear from, a lot of the financial gurus that say, oh, annuities are a bad thing, no one should ever have an annuity. Well, if you are of that mentality and don't like annuities, you should just never take anything for Social Security because it's basically structured like an annuity. And in fact, back in episode, that was 74 with Bruno Caron, that was actually my first episode that we touched base on Social Security and annuities, more so on the annuities side, but just how much overlap of how annuities, how they're structured is very much how Social Security is structured. You put in a set amount, that is your contract, and then you are, guaranteed, take your number, $500 a month, $1,000 a month for the rest of your life, whether that's you live to age 67 or 107 or anything in between. Now, I bring this up for a couple of reasons. One, like I said, Social Security really was an insurance program, but over the decades has really turned into what people see as kind of a guaranteed retirement fund. It's like, now people are living into their 70s, their 80s, even their 90s. And, more and more people are starting to hit the, age 100. So you start to look at the numbers. It's like, well, gee, they contributed into this insurance program that's kind of morphed into an annuity program or retirement program. And they worked 30, 40, maybe 50 years, but then they're drawing out of this program for another 30 years. It isn't quite like it was before where you contributed 40 years and maybe 5 to 10 years, you got a Social Security payment. And obviously because of this, over the years, the politicians have made numerous structural changes. Instead of just single digit taxes, now it's up to 6.2% at the time of this recording. And what a lot of people don't understand or maybe fully recognize is that if you work a job, you have a W-2 job. Little sidebar here, be sure to check out my YouTube show and podcast, #screw the W-2, because this is one of the reasons I am against the W-2 work lifestyle, if you will. Social Security, for what gets taken out of your paycheck, let's just keep it round numbers, you're making a good living, you get paid $100,000. So 6.2%. And again, I'm talking just the Social Security portion of this. I'm not talking Medicare. 6.2% times $100,000, that's $6,200 that goes into the Social Security fund every single year. But your employer is mandated by law to match that. So you put in 6.2%, your employer puts in 6.2%. So that comes to $12,400 out of a $100,000 paycheck that goes into the Social Security Trust Fund. And I use that in quotations every single year. And I don't think a lot of people realize that unless you're self-employed. And, I have a number of side hustles. I've been self-employed for a number of years. And for all those out there that are self-employed, you understand this very well, because all of a sudden you have to write out a completely separate check of 12.4% just to Social Security. And that's before any federal taxes, any state taxes, local taxes, sales taxes, anything like that. And the biggest thing is I've heard the one exception is that supposedly HSA contributions are exempt, like you get a deduction from your FICA taxes. I have not been able to confirm that, and I've only heard that from one source. But taking federal taxes, for instance, you're probably aware of, there's a standard deduction, roughly about $24,000 for a married couple. Basically, that means they pay taxes and then they get a refund. So the first $24,000 is essentially exempt from federal taxation after you hit the standard deduction. Then you have a number of tiers, if you will, of how much of your income above that is taxed. And Social Security doesn't have that. You are taxed at the 12.4% of your income from $1 up to the threshold, which off the top of my head, I think it's about 130 some thousand for 2023. They usually bump that threshold up year after year. And with that, for the average American, I know there was some stat a while ago I came across that 70% of Americans make, I think it was like $68,000 or less. So obviously that $68,000 is quite a bit under that threshold. So when you really sit down and think about it, between your contribution and your employer contribution, or maybe that's you're self-employed, 12.4% of your lifetime income is taxed going into this Social Security Trust Fund that, well, is pretty much insolvent. And that's coming right from the trustees. There just isn't enough money in there to pay out all the promised benefits that have been, made promises to the baby boomers and other generations. And, anyone in politics, just ask anyone that was affiliated with the second George Bush back in the early 2000s. If you want to lose re-election and lose re-election bad, just talk about privatizing Social Security and ending Social Security, especially with the baby boomers being a large voting class. That is pretty much, I know David McKnight's called it the third rail of politics, Social Security and Medicare. You just don't talk about it. Yes, it might be insolvent. Yes, the numbers may not make sense, but gosh, our constituents, the baby boomers, they vote the most. So gosh, we don't want to talk about even making any changes to Social Security. Now, like I bring that up with the trust fund, and I kind of said that in quotations, and some people have said, well, people have just stolen, or the politicians have just stolen money from the Social Security fund. If they would just put that money back, then everything would be fine. And in my research, that's not quite accurate. Now, for starters, the federal government, this was back during the LBJ terms where they were collecting money, and I'm just talking about all federal receipts. You think of corporate income tax and FICA taxes and personal income taxes and just all the different revenue streams that the government brings in. And from a fiscal standpoint, they were kind of looking at, it's like, well, gee, we're starting to spend more money on all these social programs. Again, LBJ was trying to build this great society, end poverty. Well, he did a great job at that. And just all these spending. And then he had Vietnam on top of that. I mean, he was the one president, usually you have warfare or welfare presidents, depending on their political side. He just wanted to do a little of everything, fight the Vietnam War, keep expanding that, spending more money, and then all these social programs. And more money was going out than coming in. But then they realized, oh, we're getting this huge surplus from Social Security because, the worker to retiree ratio is about, I think it was about 20-1 at that time. Still a lot more money coming in than going out. So they just kind of pooled everything together of here's all the money the government's getting in, and here's all the money the government's going out. And it made the deficits look a lot better. It just, it's kind of financial engineering. Hey, if we just pool all the money that we're getting in together and pool all the expenses that are going out together, then our fiscal outlook's going to look a lot better. And obviously that's kind of starting to catch up with them as now. But, I mentioned the worker to retiree ratio, and MC and I talk about this a little bit as well, where, Social Security first came into existence, had a, relatively high worker to retiree ratio, and that's been going lower and lower. But here's the one question I want to leave before we get into this, get in my interview with MC. A lot of people don't know this. The trust fund, by law, and this is per Simon Black of the Sovereign Man, followed him for years. I'll have a link to that in the show notes. By law, the trust fund can only invest in U.S. Treasuries. The U.S. Treasuries do not keep pace with inflation. But the very benefits of Social Security, talk to anyone, your grandparents or maybe parents that receive Social Security, they always look for their COLA adjustments, the cost of living adjustments, where it goes up every single year or pretty much every single year with the cost of living. Those benefits are indexed to inflation. So you have the investments in the trust fund don't even keep pace with inflation. Forget about a 12% average return on the stock market or anything like that. We're talking, mid-single digit returns, but inflation at the time of this recording has been between 5 and 8%. Just, again, the math doesn't add up, and a lot of people don't realize this. So, and going back to the annuity structure, Bruno and I talked about this with annuities, that in the private sector, generally speaking, annuities is just a fixed amount. You get $500 a month for the rest of your life. In the private sector, it is very rare to have a annuity payment that is structured or indexed to inflation, whereas Social Security is. So I just bring up that question. The trust fund can only invest in U.S. Treasuries, or essentially our debt. Those treasuries do not keep pace with inflation, yet the very benefits of Social Security are indexed to inflation by the COLA adjustments. How is that sustainable? And I have yet to hear any progressive or politician even give somewhat of a reasonable response or answer to that. So with that, I'll just leave that in mind. Like I said, this went very conversational with MC Laubscher. Really enjoyed catching up with him. We also went on a couple of tangents that tied into Social Security. But really, I think it tied in well to the 100th episode of the WFN podcast. So with that, we will get into MC's interview after a word from one of our valued sponsors. For investors seeking DSCR financing, check out timothyhero.com. The guy has closed over 150 DSCR loans in the last 2 years and has been appearing on podcasts and written about by journalists. He's well connected with some of the best lenders in the game and can get you the financing for your rental properties. Hey, MC, welcome back. How are things going with you?
Hey, great to be back. Things are fantastic.
Good. So, yeah, I know we're just talking off camera. You had a little bit milder winter in Pennsylvania, and we just got bombasted here in Minnesota. Last snowfall, I think, was April 17th or something like that.
Right. Well, spring is upon us, so it's a rebirth of nature, right?
Exactly.
The flowers are coming out. The birds are chirping. We got baseball season on the way for those who are involved with baseball or have kids that are playing baseball and t-ball and so forth. So lots of fun ahead.
Yeah, exactly. So now, MC, as I kind of mentioned the intro, and I've been kind of thinking for the last couple of months, what should I do for the 100th episode? It was kind of thinking back, who should I bring for a guest? What should I talk about? And then just kind of dawned on me, Social Security was signed into law by FDR in 1935 to provide income basically for people in retirement, and we've kind of see that program just morph and grow and grow and grow. And now the trustees are saying it's basically going to be broker insolvent by depending on the day of the week, 20, 30, 2032, 2028, take your pick. So it's kind of like, well, is the social security experiment pretty much done for within just 100 years? And then it's like, well, 100th episode, this might be a good topic to talk about.
Yeah. And first, I just want to congratulate you two on the 100th episode. That's fantastic stuff. You're doing great things with your show. So I'm honored to be featured as a guest on your 100th episode, and just want to congratulate you for your discipline and persistence. Being a podcaster myself, I know that, it takes a lot of work, a lot of time and effort. So it's a big commitment. So yeah, just want to congratulate you on that and just mention that.
I appreciate it.
Yeah. And then on socialist insecurity, well, yes, the joke is, if you ever enter a Ponzi scheme, you want to be some of the first people that get out of it,
yeah,
right? Because you can make money in a Ponzi scheme. You can make money in a scam.
Yeah.
So you just want to be out first. You want to be first, and you want to be out first.
Yeah.
But on a more serious note, it's a failed experiment. The math didn't add up.
No.
To begin with, and yeah, it's, we find ourselves in very, very interesting times. And I would say that during these interesting times, people have started to realize in a lot of areas in the world, and maybe you've already realized this in 2020. If you haven't, you're about to realize this very, very quickly. People in Europe have realized this, but the social contract has been broken.
Yeah. Between
governments and their citizens. So, if I look at it philosophically too, just to kind of give a big overview of what I see happening. The Western civilization is incredible. I mean, the most incredible things that we still use today was created by Western civilization, and an unbelievable amount of prosperity was generated in Western civilization. And if you look at why, right? Why was there so much produced and created, and why was so much prosperity created? Well, if you then take a step back and look at a big picture, you look at it and go, well, there's always been rule of law in Western civilization. I mean, go back as far as you want. Roman times, Greek times, city-states, Athens, Sparta. There's always been some sort of rule of law that has been governing the West for pick your time period before you want to go back. And then because of that rule of law, it created an environment which private property found a place and could be respected. Right? It was respected within this framework, this rule of law. Actions have consequences in a rule of law kind of environment. And private property was respected. And then because private property was respected, you could set up a legal framework around all of this, right? In which private property can be respected because you have a rule of law. Now you have the rule of law, legal framework, private property, and now you could have contracts because I can own that piece of real estate. Someone can rent it from me, and between us, we have a contract. And when one of us defaults on that contract or we don't contribute what we promised, there's now a legal remedy in all of that. Now, throughout the West, I would say since 2020, we have seen the rule of law just collapse. And so it's not shocking to see that the social contract has now been broken, meaning governments are no longer going to honor some of the contracts that they have, whether it be, official, whether it be unofficial with citizens. So if we look at France, what's happening in France, it's not on the news in a way that it should be, but there are some severe social unrest. Because the social contract was broken. And I know people are trying to very, very simplify this because that's how in the West we like our media delivered to us. Good guy.
Give us a 10-second YouTube short and give us the highlights.
Exactly. Headlines. So it's like, well, because President Macron just changed kind of the retirement age, basically, without running it through the legislative process as it should have been. The big picture is just that all these governments, all of them, are bankrupt.
Yeah.
The promises that they've made cannot be honored. And that's kind of where Social Security falls into. You know, when socialist insecurity was rolled out, again, it was again a very sold with a lot of sugar on it.
Yeah.
That, you know, it's going to be the social net, which is going to catch everyone and everybody's going to be provided for and so forth. But in essence, what it's turned into, it was just another mechanism from the state to steal from their citizens, because the funds were spent as soon as it was taken from them. And as you mentioned, the latest report that came out from the U.S. government showed that they're out of funds in 10 years.
Right.
Completely.
Yeah, it actually got exacerbated in 2020 with, you know, COVID lockdowns. And I mean, that's a whole nother rabbit hole we could go down. But there was more people like, oh, I just got laid off. I don't know when I'll come back. You know, I'm going to get less money. I think I'll take early retirement at 62 versus 65, or see if I get disability or whatnot. And that just, you know, when you have more people drawing on the system than contributing to the system, that's automatically recipe for disaster, we'll say.
It's the same with pensions.
Yeah.
Like the simple math would be like when it was started, like, you know, what was it? 2 or 3 people could basically support one person.
Yeah.
And because of the changes in demographics, you just don't have the same amount of people that could support anyone.
Right.
That math is completely off. It's the same with the pensions. And that's why pensions are all bankrupt too. And then, you know, that's just the math on the demographic side. And then the money management too. I mean, if we think that governments can money manage in any shape or form, I'm sure nobody listening to this can think that the government can manage their finances or manage money in any way, shape, or form. There's debt ceiling again, shocker.
Yeah. Every year, every other year, it's just same crap.
Yeah. So the management of the money was completely a disaster. And then when it comes to the pension funds, well, that math was never going to add up because, as you know, John, you can make 7 to 8% on average every single year in the stock market, regardless of what's happening, right? The average rate of return, which is a massive lie sold to people. And when you actually do the math, like they do in these pension funds, they were all underwater. And this was all leading up before 2020. You know, I just want to preface this. The 2 biggest scapegoats that are going to be used for why they have defaulted on their promises or cannot make good on their promises is going to be because of COVID and because of the banking and financial crisis, this economic crisis that is now on its way.
Or Putin, they might give that as an excuse too. So
yeah, and it had nothing to do with COVID. These programs were already done before that. It's just another excuse that they're going to use. And of course, if you look at that, it was the way that governments behaved during COVID. It had nothing to do with the virus. It was the reaction to it. The same thing with this banking and financial crisis and the economic crisis. It's going to be the reaction to that's going to make things 10 times worse. So yeah, these programs are insolvent. They cannot be made good. So what are you going to do? You can either be honest and say, we cannot make good on this. We have to restructure this in some way, shape, or form, extend the age when people take from them. I mean, you could get creative with this. You have to think like a criminal to do that, but you can. And then also, I mean, then what else are you going to do? You can inflate it away, which is basically also defaulting because the money that people would get for Social Security would be worthless because of the inflation. And then the other thing is, you know, you would hope that a large part of your older population would just die off quickly. Which is also thinking like a criminal, but I guess you can kind of like nudge, wink, wink, see where I'm coming from with this whole COVID thing. So anyway, so those are your options. And, it doesn't look like they're going to be honest with folks. So I think at this stage, they're either just going to deflate it away or maybe and this is another one of the kind of ways that I look at it, roll it into another program, which will come about after, this banking and financial and economic crisis reaches peak crisis mode.
Well, it's kind of interesting you mentioned, like, with the demographics. I mean, I don't remember the exact numbers, but around 1900 here in the U.S., average life expectancy was 48. Even when Social Security went into place, if you made it to 65, you pretty much won the lottery. A lot of people didn't live that long. So that's why we'll do this Social Security. If you hit age 65, based on our workforce demographics, 30, 40 people support one retiree. Hey, the numbers should work. Well, fast forward 80, 90 years, those have been completely flip-flop. People are living to their 80s. We still haven't really done anything with the retirement age, which should have been done a long time ago. And now, I mean, even the trustees have said for years that, I know it's roughly 3-to-1 is the break even, 3 workers supporting every retiree. And that whole period, we've gone from like 1-2% of our paycheck to 12.4 when we factor in the employer match. That's pretty much 12.5% of one's lifetime income for the average American going into this scheme, and it's still bankrupt. So it's just kind of hilarious when they say, "Oh, we just need more money and it will be solvent."
No, and to your point, they got the retirement age of 65 from Bismarck's point, and the average age at that stage when they rolled out that program was 62.
Okay.
So that was literally that program, that social program, which was another socialist kind of program, literally would kick in for people that just live past like 62 that the average person lived till.
Right.
And to your point, and I said the math didn't add up initially earlier in our conversation, and because it's a demographics problem. Yeah, I mean, like you said, you needed a certain amount of workers to support a person that is on Social Security, the same kind of way with pensions. And now you have the baby boomers, right? The baby boomers, one of the largest, the largest generation ever to go into this retirement age.
Yeah.
So you have 76 million of them?
Yeah. Well, about roughly, if I remember right, I think on average 10,000 baby boomers hit age 65 every day until 2028 or something like that.
Right. And because now the counter argument, because I always like to think like, what's the other side of it? People would say, but MC, you have the millennials, which is even bigger than the baby boomers, and they're in the workforce. And then the generation behind them is pretty close to almost to like their size, but the entire economy has changed. The entire economy. So what I mean by that is you had a very large, thriving middle class, working middle class that, like, I mean, when the baby boomers were younger too, you could have one of them work. And they could literally have everything like you see in the movies. In the days, they could have the white picket fence, big house in the suburbs, 2 cars, 3 children, all that kind of stuff. That is not the reality that the millennials were born into.
No,
it's not the reality that the generations behind them will, because you have had a hollowing out of the middle class in the United States, and this continues to happen. This went into overdrive on steroids in 2020, with most small and medium businesses going under. That's what COVID was too. It was a consolidation phase. Your Walmarts, your Targets were allowed to stay open, but not your store on the corner, your small business person. And, so most people that were employed at that time too were employed by small businesses that got hammered. So you had a huge hollowing out that went into overdrive in 2020. And this has just continued, by the way. And in the environment that we are at right now, the economic environment, interest rates are skyrocketing. Like they doubled in 6 months? Last year. So what do you think that does to a small business when you have that event? That we're already just trying to hold on for dear life after just trying to recover and just trying to make ends meet. They're now wiped out too. So we're continuing to see this. The interest rates that's going up will continue this. So all of these folks that would be employed and paying into this are all gone. And unfortunately, what you're seeing developing is sort of like a Hunger Games society. where you're going to have a lot of extremely wealthy people at the top, at the capital, and the rest of the people are going to be in the colonies.
Hey everyone, John Rickgarn here. Do you want to grow your money guaranteed and tax-free and have access to liquid cash for real estate investing? Infinite banking, high cash value, whole life policies allow you to grow money guaranteed and tax-free. See what the infinite banking concept will do for you. Reach out to Barry Brooksby, the infinite banking expert, to see your own numbers. His email is barry@focuswealthgroup.com. Barry is a personal friend of mine who's helped me over the past 7 years. He'll teach you how to grow more wealth, guaranteed and tax-free. Email him at barry@focuswealthgroup.com or go to wealthandfreedomnexus.com/infinite banking.
I don't even think it's a hyperbolic statement if you start to see the numbers coming out now in the United States. It's like 99% of stocks are owned by 1% of the population.
Yeah. Well, not even 1%. You have they say the 1%, but so many is owned by the pension funds, the BlackRocks, and then you got this, in my opinion, this idiot, Larry, promoting all this ESG, telling these companies, hey, I own 60% of your stock. I own $600 billion of your market share. You're going to do what I say. Otherwise, I'm going to dump all your shares on the market, which is just going to go into free fall. So make sure you got solar panels on your roofs and doing all this other stuff that I want you to do.
And to your point, for anyone listening to this that would just heard what you said and be like, how does that work? Go to Yahoo Finance and type in any stock ticker. I tried this the other day and I randomly picked 5 just stock tickers and I put it in. And then there's actually a link that you can click on, shareholders. And you click on that link and it gives you the largest shareholders of every stock. And the 3 names that come up every single time, BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street.
Yep.
So what you just said is, because everybody, when you say something like that, oh, it sounds a little conspiratorial. I'm like, look it up. Go to Yahoo Finance. When I'm telling you BlackRock owns and controls all of these entities, corporate entities.
Yeah.
You can literally look this up. This is public information. So this is why ESG, environmental, social, and governance programs are rolled out throughout corporate America, because the folks that actually control every single corporation that's listed at publicly traded stock is controlled by these folks. So yeah, I mean, it's an incredible time that we live in. It's a very, I see, I'm a very optimistic person. I see a lot of dark clouds, stormy clouds, and I see a massive storm coming in. And with that storm, there will be incredible opportunities. Unlike which we've seen, I mean, we're talking not just our lifetime. I think it's going to be several lifetimes. I think, the crisis that has just started, I mean, we've literally just scratched the surface. I think this is still kind of in the foreplay stage. I think what's coming is going to be like a banking, financial, and economic crisis, which is the biggest one in 80 to 100 years. Every 80 to 100 years, you have one of these kind of events. It's kind of a reset of systems, and there's a friend of mine that talks about the complexity of systems, that all systems eventually will fail and collapse, but just because this is how the universe operates and works, right? And what he means is if we look at pick the systems now. Let's pick banking and the financial system. How complex is it? It's complexity on complexity.
Yep.
On complexity. On complexity. I mean, to give an analogy with the derivatives, which a lot of people were made aware of after the 2008 crash, it used to be you and I just go to the casino, we place a bet, and we either lose or we win, right? Yeah. But now there was a bet placed on our bet. Yeah. A bet on that bet, and then on our bet, and then another bet on that bet, on that bet, on our, and it just keeps going. Exactly. So the complexity is so crazy and stacked that eventually it becomes too complex and the system collapses onto itself. And that's where we are at right now. And it takes about 80 to 100 years for this to happen every single time. So, of course, there's other nefarious characters that want to control the collapse, to be in control of it so that they can set the rules for the new one. This happens every single time. But I think like the doomy and gloomy part of it, I think if you are a business owner or an entrepreneur or an investor, I mean, think of what you do as a business owner, entrepreneur, investor. You solve problems.
Yeah.
Right? That's essentially your job, is to create solutions to problems that the marketplace has. You're going to have a lot of problems to solve.
Exactly.
A lot of opportunities.
Exactly. Well, and even I had Bronson Hill, another guest on my podcast back on episode 32. And I always just kind of look at, Robert Kiyosaki always said there's three sides to every coin. There's heads, the tails, and the edge. And everyone now, is talking about inflation. They're like, the cost of goods are going up, the cost of gas, the cost of food, et cetera. But you can flip that and say, well, how can I benefit from inflation? And there was his name was Hugo. I can't think of his last name, but it was a guy in Hitler's Germany before they started in a hyperinflation. He saw what was coming. He took out a ton of bank loans, bought real assets, and those loans are basically deflated away to nothing, paid them off, and he became very, very wealthy from inflation. So it's like, if you can just change your mindset of, is it good news, is it bad news, or is it just news? And if it's news, how do you set yourself up to benefit from it?
There's going to be fortunes made by people that can see what's coming now and position themselves, and then also come up with solutions. I mean, we haven't even brought in AI into this.
Yeah.
That's another problem for all these programs that we've already mentioned, right? Whether it's Social Security, whether it is, pensions, whether it's qualified retirement plans like 401ks and IRAs, and I mean the FIRE economy, right? Which is your finance, insurance, real estate kind of economy. This AI is, I mean, I played around with ChatGPT when it first came out, and which is this AI bot for folks that are not familiar with it. And first I got very excited, and I was like, this is like the coolest thing ever. And then I sat back, and then I'm like, oh, wow. It just hit me like a bag of bricks, basically, that this is one of the scariest things, and for many reasons. But the first thing that came to mind was most jobs are gone.
Yeah.
80% of jobs are basically gone, because we've moved. Look at our economy has moved from where not a lot of people are actually doing physical things. It's all information and it's all online. And if it's information and it's online, it could probably be replaced by AI.
Yeah.
And that's going to be a massive economic shock that's coming. Massive shock in the economy, which most people don't see. They haven't even really factored that in, right? And that's why I mentioned earlier in our interview that one of the solutions, here's a spoiler alert for folks, that you're going to get, there's a couple coming after this crisis. The first thing is central bank digital currencies, which you could go straight to the bank for international settlements to look this up. This is the plan. You could go to the Federal Reserve website. You could go to the European Central Bank website. All of these countries, I mean, there's even websites tracking the developments of central bank digital currencies. They're ready to be rolled out.
Well, and China's even started to roll them out. I mean, not to, communist states, they can do things quicker.
Yeah, exactly. In Nigeria, they've just rolled them out. So in the United States, it was developed, it was called Project Hamilton. It was a project by MIT and the Federal Reserve branch in Boston. So it's ready to go. It's already been beta tested. It's ready to roll. That's your first one. The other one is universal basic income, which is basically, I mean, it's your socialist kind of communist kind of, everybody gets paid the same amount.
Yeah.
Now, if you think about all the programs that are bankrupt, whether it be Social Security, whether it be pensions, whether it be qualified plans, IRAs, that people say there's still a massive, my balance are still high. You just wait. Give about 12 to 18 months. You'll see where those balances are. And then the bringing in of AI, which is going to make a lot of people obsolete. What are you going to do? And then people will accept those two things based on that. So again, not doomy and gloomy. There's a plethora of opportunities where you can actually, look at the problems that this will create and find solutions to those problems.
Agreed. Just kind of curious, MC, and this is just back on the Social Security thing, this is just one thing that's always kind of I found humorous, but I want to get your take on it. Where, Social Security, that was FDR's, one of his big programs. Pretty much every Democrat and progressive are, for it. They want to keep it active. We can't, break our promises, et cetera, et cetera. Ironically, I've always found it where progressives generally are against regressive taxes, sales taxes, like, hey, it hits the lower income more than the higher income, et cetera. But the way I see it, especially 12.4% of one's lifetime income for the average American, that's like the most regressive tax out there. And I always found that kind of ironic. What is your take on it?
Yeah. So, I mean, my philosophy is very, very libertarian and ANCAP. So I will say this about, that kind of statement. And this might sound, by the way, now that I preface that, this might sound kind of like not like that. Social Security is a tax, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I look at that as like, it's just, since the Federal Reserve Bank was created in 1913, most people don't know this. I mean, there wasn't any taxes even, there were very, very little taxes.
Yeah.
And there wasn't taxes at that time. So, the whole taxation is kind of theft, in my opinion. You want to keep capital with good capital allocators, and there will be more capital created. Mm-hmm. When you take capital away from terrible capital allocators, by their deeds you shall know them, our governments, you have the results that you see right now. Now, I will say this. When people say those are, they throw Social Security in the same bucket as kind of Medicare and all these other kind of things, right? Now, you did literally pay money into this. Mm-hmm. So when you tell people, it's kind of government, you paid money into that. So my philosophy is at least you should just get the money back that you put in there. It's not going to be worth the same to begin with. But yeah, from a tax standpoint, I'm not a big fan of taxes. I think that if you are environments where you keep capital with good capital allocators, people that create capital, and continue to create them and turn it into more, and everybody gets the benefit, you're going to have a better overall result, just as a society as a whole.
Yeah.
The whole kind of like the rich should pay more taxes, that it's just, it's really like, there was a movie, I think it was Mike Judge, about Idiocracy, which is just an incredibly funny movie. So he's a pretty funny guy. The scary thing is it's become true because if you look at the political discourse, not just in the United States, all over the world, it's literally idiocracy. The rich people, will not pay taxes. They have teams that'll make sure legally they do not pay taxes, and most of them, by the way, fund the people that are quote unquote politicians or politicians. The actors. So they're not going to bite the hand that feeds them.
Yeah, what one person calls bribes, we call in America political contributions.
It's funny. I always say that to people. I'm from Africa. I just call it as it is. It's bribes and payoffs.
Yeah, exactly.
There's no political contributions or, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So I'm saying, obviously you've had your businesses, or I should say businesses for, a number of years. You got the Cashflow Ninja podcast. You got, Producers Wealth, help people factor in, infinite banking and other strategies in their lifetime. I've kind of looked at it like, okay, Social Security is taxed on earned income. So what does that mean? I've worked the last 5, 6, 7 years to get more of my income, dividends, rentals, royalties, interest payments, forms of income that aren't subject to FICA tax. Because it's like, okay, if I work a job and I just don't pay it, I go to prison. But if I can just shift my income to different sources that aren't taxed by FICA, well, I pretty much just got a 12.5% raise, essentially. Going down that, what would you say to, for those of us that see the writing on the wall, Social Security is insolvent, we can't depend on it, really can't depend on the government for a lot of things. What steps I would even just say, it doesn't have to be a rich person, just an average, normal American lives in the suburbs, $60,000-$70,000 household income. What could someone like them do to just, be better on the financial position?
Yeah, that's a great question. So right now, the advice that I would give people is, first you have to understand where you're at and what we are about to go through. And it's not going to be like anything that you've seen in your lifetime or your parents. If your parents are baby boomers, it's going to be more like something that your grandparents and their parents maybe remember, the 1920s, 1930s, and 1940s. That's the world that you're going to live in. People have stories about their grandparents where when they died, they found money stuffed in like tin cans.
Yep, exactly.
In the back, you're going to see that again. By the way, that's where we're headed when this plays out. So first, understand that you're about to be challenged significant, like unlike you've ever been challenged in your life. So you have to get in the best physical, spiritual, and mental shape ever. That's the first thing that you should do. The second thing that you should probably do is you should figure out all of the very, very basic things that you and your family depend on and pretend that you cannot get that tomorrow at a store. And you cannot order on Amazon and have it be delivered the next day to the door. Yeah. That's the second thing. Then you're going to look at, oh, wow, if that happens, food, water, things that you might need from an energy standpoint, whether it be a generator, would be solar, and so forth. So you should definitely look at buying some food, having something that you could filter water with, and so forth, and also have some energy. And then when supply chains are severely disrupted, and there's no food, there's no water, and then there might be some electrical, like rolling blackouts or power stuff going down. Well, what's the next thing that you should be thinking about is, well, when that happens, the probability is very high that people are going to behave badly. Yeah. So you need to get whatever you need to protect you and your family, to make sure that your home is protected, and have a family defense plan. There's a ton of videos that you could find online that shares that. And then develop relationships in your community, around your neighbors. Get to know your neighbors, get to know people in your community. Have conversations, not like, and again, this is not prepper stuff. This is like basically just.
Yeah, we're not talking about an old silo in North Dakota and make a condo in there or something.
This is not prepper stuff. This is how the people used to live, by the way, in like the 30s, 40s, and like 50s. Everybody had these things. They were able to protect themselves. They knew their neighbors. They were a close-knit community. It was literally, my mentor Doug Casey jokes about it. It's the Leave It to Beaver days, right? Yeah. But this is how it used to be, and you're going to have to go back to that, to basically to get through this of what's coming, because it's going to be tough. So that's like the first kind of level of stuff. Then you've got to take a look at, from a wealth standpoint. I would say at this point, you have to figure out from a financial standpoint and go through your household spending plan and look at all the things that are excess fat. Again, I don't come from a worldview of scarcity. I have very much a worldview of abundance, but this is the time where people should not be spending money that they don't have. This is the time where you should be putting things away, getting some cash on hand, get a couple of coins. If you can't afford a gold coin, get a couple of silver coins. Yeah. Even for folks that really want that haven't delved into this, even get some crypto. Again, you don't have to buy a full Bitcoin. You could get a couple of Satoshis and have it on there, so that you have a diversified liquidity bucket, right? My friend Francis Hahn calls it the three horses in the stable, right? Different horses. Cash is your workhorse, gold and silver is your warhorse, and then crypto is your racehorse. You might need all three, or you might just need one or two.
Yeah.
But you should be looking at that. And I mean, that's kind of like from a liquidity standpoint, and then investments and stuff. If you are beyond that, real stuff, everything that's paper and digital and financialized and depends on counterparty risk, which is a term which I have talked about ad nauseum now for 3 years, because I knew the biggest thing is going to be counterparty risk. Counterparty risk is the party on the other side of the transaction that has to fulfill on that. So, for example, when you put money on the bank, the counterparty is the bank. So when you have counterparty risk, you have to look and say, is my bank insolvent? Is my credit union insolvent? How much money should I leave in the bank? I would argue you shouldn't leave a lot of money in the bank. You know, at the time of recording, we've only started to see the beginning of this banking crisis. You know, with 3 banks go under, we have now like all the capital flows going from smaller and regional banks into the too big to fail banks because of the Federal Reserve policy. And of course, Janet Yellen, her comments that she made on Capitol Hill being questioned. So now there's a capital flight into this. So you're going to see a lot of banks fail, a lot of banks. You're going to see financial institutions fail. You're going to see insurance companies fail. You're going to see a lot of companies in that space fail. So counterparty risk. So if you have what you don't have in your hand and that's physical, I mean, it's counterparty risk. So that's kind of what I would advise. I mean, it's not very sexy, but I just wanted to give practical advice to people. If you're like, you know, a family making $60,000, $70,000 per year in a household, and you're in the suburbs somewhere in the United States, that's probably what you should be thinking about. That's the best energy and focus that you will have right now, is spending it on very basic things, making sure all the basic things are in place.
Agreed. Yeah, no, like I said, I think it just needs to be basic. It doesn't, kind of back what you said, complexity on top of complexity. You know, I don't think we need to, you know, have 15 different bank accounts and 70 money market accounts and 13 certificate of deposits or anything like that. It's just, you know, very basic. Like you said, what worked in the 30s, 40s, 50s, what people did back then.
Yeah. And from a portfolio standpoint, I mean, you could literally put it in a quadrant and have cash, gold and silver, precious metals. You can have your cash flow portfolio, and you can have a growth bucket where you look at trends, you look at asymmetric plays. Asymmetric is just massive distortions in the markets, and there's huge upside potential. An example would be the destruction of like the quote unquote fossil fuels, you know, the oil, gas, coal, and uranium kind of industries, and knowing that there's no other system to move it over to yet.
Yeah.
And you're going to see a massive supply crunch there eventually, which has huge upside potential. So anyway, so there's a lot of that. And then trends, I mean, there's folks that invest in AI. There's folks that invest in certain crypto kind of businesses. There's just so many plays when it comes to that. So you should have a bucket for that too. But I think at first, at the time that we're recording right now, you probably should just get through the storm first. Yeah. And then regroup and then capitalize on opportunities afterwards.
Agreed. Yeah, definitely. And like you said, I think there's going to be opportunities down the line, just like there were opportunities, you know, after the financial crisis. I mean, I wasn't old enough or smart enough to buy up real estate at $30,000 for a single family home, but there will be other opportunities, like you said, after the next storm. So,
yeah. And just think of the creativity, because, I mean, who didn't see the commercial crash coming? Which this is not in the news. It's already, the crash has started. It's just not in the news. They're not going to tell you this on CNBC. Jim Cramer's not going to talk about this for a while. But gee, we shut down an economy. We told everybody to go home and stay in their homes, lock them down, and had them work virtually. And then we just thought after, you know, several months, maybe over a year, I don't even remember how long the madness continued. But then we just figured all these office buildings that were completely empty are just going to be pulled back up, right? So, yeah, I mean, folks already, when that happened in 2020, were calling, oh, we have a massive commercial crash coming. It was just inevitable. Yeah, I think it's now here too. So there's a lot of storms coming together. I think that we already talked about and discussed: banking, financial, economic state. It's going to be a very interesting time.
Yeah, but like you said, as entrepreneurs, if we solve problems, that's how you create wealth. And, if you solve those problems, you'll get wealthy.
Yeah, just think about all of those empty buildings that are going to be bought up for pennies on a dollar and then turn into something else productive or be converted into something.
Yeah.
So there's going to be folks that are going to make fortunes when the dust settles. So, if you're listening to this, I would say, don't stick your head in the sand. Look at everything that's coming. Yeah. Recognize it, accept it, and then figure out a strategy to get through it. And then when the dust settles, there's going to be too many opportunities because there's going to be so many problems to solve for folks.
Agreed. So, well, with that, MC, I think we're at a good stopping point. I know you and I could probably talk, for hours on end on all these topics. But as a final note for anyone interested in learning more about what you do, your companies, your podcast, what's the best way to reach out?
Yeah, so cashflowninja.com, cashflowninja.com. Okay. So Cashflow Ninja, we have 3 podcasts now. We have Cashflow Ninja.
Oh, wow.
We have Cashflow Investing Secrets. We have Reset Investing Secrets. And all of those podcasts are for free on our platform. Then I have a book, The 21 Best Cashflow Niches, that can be found there too. The best in cashflow opportunities shared on my show. I've got a newsletter where I share a brand new cashflow niche every single month. Okay. You can find that at cashflowninja.com too. And then we have a mastermind, which is kind of like a reset mastermind for business owners and investors that see what's coming, that want to be part of a community to explore not only the challenges that are there, but solutions to the challenges and get through this. So yeah, we've got a lot of exciting things going on there.
Perfect. So yeah, for all those listening, I'll have those in the show notes for you to check out. And yeah, cashflowninja.com, definitely recommend it. So MC, it was great to catch up. I hope to have you back on the show again and wish you all the best for 2023 into 2024.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me and congratulations again on your 100th episode.
Appreciate it. Thanks a lot, MC.
Thanks.
Thank you for listening. Be sure to share, rate, review, and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. For more updates, check out www.wealthandfreedomnexus.com. Remember, nothing on this show should be considered tax, legal, investment, or professional advice. This show is produced solely for educational and informational purposes. Please consult an appropriate and licensed tax, legal, real estate, or business professional for specific advice for your situation. For distribution or publication rights or media interviews, please contact the host.